there has been an incident with a Philippines transport aircraft. I think it's a transport aircraft that they use for surveillance, which is pretty common. Had flares deployed in front of it from 1 to 2 Chinese fighter aircraft in the vicinity of Scarborough Shoal. Incidentally, this occurred, I think, within 24 hours of the completion of the MMCA, which is the Multilateral Maritime Cooperative Activity, a term that I hate, but effectively looks like a passage
Almost
exercise.
like they heard you on the podcast, 2 weeks ago, and then they thought that a maritime cooperative activity wasn't enough, so they had to then put that multilateral bit in just to irk you that little bit more.
It does irk me. I mean, I spent 3 years as Navy's exercise planner out of MAROPS in Bungadore and never heard the term Multilateral Maritime Cooperative Activity. But there you go. Time has changed. That was a long time ago. But so we saw that take place in the last week between Canada, Australia, the Philippines, and the US. Australia contributed a P8. I'm not sure where from, but probably the P8 that operates out of Malaysia fairly regularly. But about 24 hours after this, we had the incident where this Philippines transport plane operating in the vicinity of Scarborough Shoal, which we know is a significant flashpoint between China and the Philippines. It is a shoal, low tide elevation, in accordance with the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal, if you're a legal geek, within the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone. But we saw this deployment of flares again. Now, I think it's significant because we had actually seen a reduction. Well, it looks like a reduction in this kind of behaviour this year. We did have the incident in the LOC in May where we saw an Australian helicopter operating from HMAS Brisbane have flares deployed in front of it. And a couple of other incidents this year, but it looks like, certainly from some of the reporting from, US senior officials from Indo-PACOM, that there's less of these incidents. So it kind of stands out. What's your take on this incident?
In terms of the incident, I'm always in kind of two minds. Is it immediately a reference and a response to something, or is this just part of the, if this had happened another week, would we have been picking up on it in quite the same sort of way? But yes, it does look like this is something of a response. I thought the MMCA, for all of its dubious acronym, sort of notage, but I thought it's quite interesting. It's quite notable. Less about what actually happened, although the bringing together of 4 partners I thought was quite interesting, but particularly about the way it was flagged quite openly and really almost promoted, which I thought was interesting, and was clearly sent to try and make a statement. Was the Chinese activity a response to that statement? Well, we'll never know for sure, but you could certainly it doesn't seem too much of a reach to get there, I guess, would be my kind of conclusion.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, you go.
I was just going to ask you about what your take was, barring your grumpiness about the name, about the MMCA. I saw you were talking a little bit about the fact that it was a P8 involved.
Yeah, look, it's always an interesting one in terms of when we do these exercises, what we contribute. And sometimes you can read too much into what forces a country contributes to an exercise. There was a lot of debate about what Australia would contribute. It sounds like the MMCA, hopefully it doesn't catch on, was announced before the nature of Australia's contribution. The nature of Australia's contribution wasn't contained in the announcement. It was a P8, it wasn't a ship. We know that we have challenges in Australia in terms of the availability of ships at the moment. To be honest, I don't think it is too significant. I mean, you're not going to send a ship to every single exercise in the region, but I think it's just part of a broader conversation about the amount of ships the Royal Australian Navy has and how quickly we need to get after this general purpose frigate, which hopefully there'll be an announcement on the next couple of months. It's got to be. I think the other thing that was interesting, just to your point about how signposted the MMCA was, so this, quadrilateral, although not the quad, different quad, quadrilateral activity.
Not even the squad.
Not even the squad. In the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone. So interestingly, the joint statement that came out, they put the names under the joint statement, which I don't think is entirely common. And they mentioned the Chiefs of Defence Force of, the 3 countries and the commander of Indo-PACOM. So I think that was all about the messaging. We've mentioned the incident with the Philippines and the Chinese aircraft about 24 hours after the MMCA. China did announce almost the same day as the MMCA that they would be conducting a joint exercise, or a Chinese joint exercise, in the vicinity of Scarborough Shoal as a response. And so these aircraft that responded to the Philippines transport aircraft probably were conducting that joint exercise. So certainly there's some signalling going on, and I think it was probably important to wrap the Canadian deployment of a ship to the Indo-Pacific into something like this. There has been a lot of questions about what about Canada and all of these new squads and quads and AUKUS and things like that.